Buenos Aires, Argentina, early 1900s. Police in the city are trying to understand something strange. Children are being attacked. Sometimes a child disappears. Sometimes they are found badly injured. And sometimes, fires break out in the middle of the night. But police have no suspect. No clear lead. Just one strange detail that keeps coming up again and again. Witnesses keep saying the same thing. Right before the incident, people saw a small boy nearby. At the beginning of the 20th century, Buenos Aires was growing fast. Thousands of immigrants were arriving from Europe. New neighborhoods were appearing. New buildings were rising everywhere. But between those streets, there were still empty lots, abandoned buildings, construction sites. Children spent most of their time outside, playing in the streets, running through empty fields, exploring places adults rarely paid attention to. Parents worked long hours, so it wasn't unusual to see children wandering around alone. But slowly, something disturbing began to happen. A child would disappear, another one would be found injured, and sometimes, in the middle of the night, a fire would break out somewhere in the city. At first, police treated every case separately. No one realized these events might actually be connected, but they were. The first known attacks began around 1906. The victims were children. The attacker would approach them calmly. Sometimes he offered candy. Sometimes he showed them a toy. And then, he would lead the child somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one would notice. Some victims survived, and when they spoke to adults, they mentioned something strange. The attacker looked very young, almost like a child himself. But most adults didn't believe that. To the police, the idea sounded impossible. A child could be responsible for crimes like this. It didn't seem realistic. Around the same time, fires were also reported across the city. Sometimes a warehouse burned, sometimes an empty building, and again, witnesses mentioned the same thing. Right before the fire, people had seen a boy nearby, small, quiet, with unusually large ears. But at the time, no one paid attention to that detail. The boy grew up in a poor neighborhood in Buenos Aires. His family was made up of immigrants from Europe. Life at home was difficult. His father drank heavily. Arguments inside the house were common. Neighbors remembered strange things about him. He often wandered the streets alone. He didn't really play with other children. And sometimes, people saw him doing something disturbing. He was cruel to animals. Cats, stray animals. Sometimes, he killed them. Some neighbors were disturbed by this. But in those days, people rarely saw this as a serious warning sign. There was another strange detail. After small fires in the neighborhood, people sometimes remembered seeing the same boy nearby. But no one had proof, so nothing happened, and the attacks in the city continued for years. Eventually, police would learn the name of the teenager behind the attacks. His name was Cayetano Santos Godinho. He was small, thin, and his large ears were very noticeable. Because of his appearance, people in Argentina later gave him a nickname, El Petiso Orejudo, which roughly means, the big-eared little man. When he was finally arrested, he was only 16 years old. Investigators later concluded that the attacks had been happening from around 1906 until 1912. During that time, Cayetano Santos Godinho was linked to 4 murders of children, multiple attempted murders, and several cases of arson. Some investigators believed there might have been more victims, but in court, those were the crimes that could be proven. After his arrest, police began interrogating him, and they noticed something unusual. He didn't seem scared. Sometimes he answered questions calmly. Sometimes, he stayed silent for long periods of time. It almost looked like the situation did not affect him emotionally. Doctors examined him. Their opinions were divided. Some believed he suffered from serious mental illness. Others believed he understood exactly what he was doing. That question became one of the key issues during the trial. When police reviewed the old cases, they realized something troubling. The crimes might have been solved much earlier. Many attacks had been investigated separately. Witness descriptions did not alarm anyone. People kept saying the same thing. They saw a boy, and investigators simply didn't believe a child could be responsible for crimes like this. Sometimes, Cayetano Santos Godino had even been seen near crime scenes, but no one questioned him seriously. Because of that, the attacks continued for years. In 1912, another attack happened. A child was found badly injured. This time, witnesses noticed a teenager leaving the area quickly. Police stopped him. At first, it looked like a routine check. But then, something important happened. Several witnesses recognized him. They said they had seen the same boy near other crime scenes. Police brought him in for questioning, and as detectives reviewed the old cases, more and more connections appeared. Descriptions, locations, witness accounts. Slowly, it became clear the person they had been looking for years was now sitting right in front of them. The trial attracted massive attention. The defendant was only 16 years old. Doctors presented different psychological evaluations, but the court eventually concluded that Cayetano Santos Godino was responsible for his actions. He was found guilty of 4 murders, of attempted murders, and of arson. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Later, he was transferred to a remote prison at the southern edge of the country, in Ushuaia. Cayetano Santos Godino spent the rest of his life in prison. Other inmates reportedly treated him with hostility because his crimes involved children. He lived there for decades, and in 1944, he died in custody. His case became one of the darkest chapters in Argentina's criminal history, because for years, the person responsible had been seen by many people. He lived nearby, he walked the same streets as everyone else, and he looked like an ordinary boy. No one could believe that the danger looked exactly like that. Do you think Cayetano Santos Godino could have been stopped earlier if people had recognized the warning signs? And what do you think had the biggest influence on the person he eventually became?